one of these things where it's really interesting. Where there's only 8 million Americans skateboarding and 20 million Americans playing soccer, and there's 60 million Americans playing poker, but yet it has not transferred into a lifestyle brand. And we're working with some major brands right now, trying to figure out which is the right partner for us.
What's up, everyone? Today we've got one of the faces behind many of the big things going on in poker and then many of the big things to come. And he's wildly successful in poker, living basically the dream that everyone in poker, a lot of people in poker, are trying to live with, luxury vehicles and doing whatever the hell he wants. And part of my dream actually is to start businesses and making a difference. And he says, I hope it's true actually, because I like his brand, to be a maverick. I believe in being a maverick in many different ways, and we'll see if he is going to take over the world. What's up, Eric Persson?
Hey, Jungle, it's good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for your time. I want to talk about, one thing that really intrigues me a bit about you is why were you so invested in, what? I don't know if these questions are related, but how did the brand of Mavericks come about? And also, why were you so invested in poker?
Yeah, so I'll take that in order. So Maverick is actually the name of my son, and the reason, my 11-year-old son, and I have a 5-year-old son named. Yeah, and I have a 5-year-old son named Ace. And Maverick, we chose the name for Maverick because I think it's a cool name, and it has my name, Eric, in it. And so I thought it was a name that he would never get made fun of. It's pretty cool. And, it carried on me a little bit, and I thought, could carry on with that after I'm dead. So the way I got into poker, Dan, is I have, all I've ever done in my life is work in casinos. And when I came to UNLV as an 18-year-old, I started to play poker. And so back then there was no limit hold'em. There was in some tournaments actually at the Desert Inn, but mostly it was stud. It was limit games, and there's some split, and there was some limit hold'em as well. And the Mirage had the biggest games, which at that time was like 20-40 and 40-80 no limit hold'em and limits. I'm sorry, 20 and 40 and 40-80 limit hold'em. And the equivalent in stud as well. And so as an 18-year-old, I started playing actually the Tropicana, and like probably a lot of 18-year-olds, before there was online, playing like 1 to 5, 7-card stud, red super systems. And it ended up, and progressing, eventually I got to a 5-10 game at the Mirage with a 50-cent ante. It paid my mortgage. I kept those 50-cent pieces, put them in a 2-liter bottle. And my mortgage at that time was $608 a month. And I would pay it with 50-cent pieces. Like I would collect them in 2-liter bottles and then turn that into cash and then pay my mortgage. And I thought I was rich, So I was making, as an 18-year-old and 19, 20-year-old, I was making like 80, 100,000 a year. And I thought that was like all the money in the world, So
Shit.
It was great. And the games are a lot different, like people have gotten a lot better over time. And I was the youngest player by a landslide, and now there's a lot of young players who enter poker, and it's been fun to see it evolve. So I put myself through undergrad. I went to Georgetown Law. I put myself through law school playing poker. And then I got away from it. I started, working in gaming. I started at Coast Resorts, and I basically had every job out there, from a dealer, floorman, pit manager, sportsbook, soft count, hard count. I had to carry coins around. You name the job I had. It was the biggest gift ever that Michael Gahn did for me. And from there I went to Caesars, and then I went over eventually to Venetian, where I ran slots and marketing globally for Las Vegas Sands, and so I was responsible for the P&L for slots in Macau, Singapore, Vegas, and PA. Eventually, I left, and I bought my first 2 casinos, and up in Wendover, Nevada, which is serviced with Salt Lake City market. So I left Sands, and that's how I started Maverick Gaming. So there was never a doubt that when I started the company, I was going to call it Maverick Gaming, because I think, first of all, it's a cool name. I think it's a brand, and I think the bandit is like something that poker players can identify with, is like a lifestyle. And so I felt like I had a really good start. And so that's actually ended up proving to be true. Like it always amazes me when I see people wear my hats, and it's pretty fucking cool. And they're all over the world, man. So like a lot in England actually and stuff. So it's like, it's a lot of fun to see that and see the brand get out there. And then through this most recent iteration where, I partnered with Bally's, and we're going to be building probably the second largest poker room in North America when it's fully built out, right in the Providence, Rhode Island, which is going to compete with Boston, Mohegan Sun, Foxwoods, obviously Wynn and MGM. And we think we're just going to take over that market because we think that market's really underserved. We don't think it's managed that well. And we think there's just a ton of opportunity to go out there and dominate the market. So super excited to be able to partner with another gaming company to bring like the first Maverick room in a population. New England market's enormous, and we're super excited to do that. So just seeing this journey, it's been a lot of fun. But it all started at a 1-5-7 card stud table at the Tropicana, actually.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm a huge fan of innovation in ways that are positive, especially for poker. And yeah, it's a very inspiring story. Yeah, I do think 18-year-old having an 80,000 and 100,000 that young is like quite a big thing. It's kind of the dream that I'm trying to sell here. I think it's still possible. It's hard for people to have much individuality, but I think that poker, to some extent, represents that. At least it's an option if someone does make some money and succeeds and goes and like starts a business or whatever it is. Like now they're fully independent. That's one of the things I really believe in poker, or one thing I really like about it. Do you agree? And I'm curious of a follow-up question is I'm curious of the only thing with poker is I'm curious of the incentive structure with that. But first, do you agree with what I'm saying? Is that relevant to your aspirations?
I think that what you're saying, it resonates with a lot of the people who follow and engage with me. Like my story is that I was adopted, and I grew up in a very, very poor town, and I never had anything handed to me, and I've been fighting for whatever I have my whole life, and so there's wins and there's losses and there's getting kicked in the nuts and getting back up, and I think that the more people have understood about who I am, what my life is, like it's just how my brand's grown. So I do believe like poker has a very special place in my heart because in so many ways it's egalitarian. Like it doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't care about anything. Like if you're willing to put in the work and spend the time and truly care, you can be successful, and you can carve out a life that can be different than the life that you have. Like, and usually there's a lot of people who beat poker, but they don't beat the other leaks in their life, as you know, Dan. And so like, it could be sports betting, it could be drugs, it could be partying, it could be whatever it is. But like for poker itself, the people who focus on it and really are willing to spend the time, they'll succeed. And it truly changed my life, And so now to be in a spot where, I was an 18-year-old playing 1-5 at the Trop without an ID and just hoping they never ID'd me, to a place now where, I'm building poker rooms with other gaming companies is really cool because like I believe that poker is in its renaissance. World Series just had its most entrants ever again, but yet poker, but yet poker is not flourishing like it will yet, and that's because if you take a look at the profit center in casinos, over 90% is going to be driven from slot machines. The balance is going to be driven from some hotel rooms or just depending on the mix of whatever that business is. But as a consequence, the people who focus on those businesses, who manage those businesses, they usually come up with a marketing background or they come up with a slot background. But they definitely don't come up with a poker background, and they very rarely even have a tables background. And so what's happened in North America is poker has declined. And poker's is not – there's all kinds of places where it's legal to have poker rooms, and there's casinos, but they just choose not to have poker rooms. And the reason they choose is because not because the poker rooms can't eke out 2, 5, maybe 10 million a year in profit, but because they don't know where to start. They know there's a lot of labor involved. They know it's a big bet. They have to dedicate the space. They've never built a poker room before. They don't know how to train all the dealers. They don't know what the difference between a bad beat and a high hand is. They don't know how to integrate into the tournament circuit. They don't know how would I get all these dealers for the tournament circuit if I actually did have a big tournament at my place. So it seems like too much trouble for a lot of operators. And that's where Maverick comes in because, my life's been about poker, and our team has the wherewithal, the expertise, and we're happy to partner with companies and just start bringing back rooms one by one breathing life into poker rooms across North America and also making the Maverick brand bigger and bigger. So I think that the Maverick, like what you're saying, is why the followers I have, the people who, so passionately defend me, they know that like I fight, and they know that I don't just do like what everybody else does. And they know that like they can identify with me because I win and I lose. Like I'm not the best technical poker player in the world. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, but like I'm in this really crazy sweet spot where I'm good enough to beat a lot of games. I'm smart enough to focus on the right opponents, but I'm not so good that I can't get into really big private games. So it's like, it's a hard dynamic because, as you know, Dan, one of the hardest things in poker is there is this ceiling for a lot of younger players. They have studied GTO charts and they're really good with ranges, and they'll beat a 2-5 game, they'll beat a 5-10 game, they'll beat the 10-20 game over at the Win, but they don't know how to get into like the big privates, the 100, 200, and they'll never get into the really, really big games. And it's because the people who do, they don't understand that poker isn't about just solving ranges and being a profitable poker player. You have to be able to bring something incremental to the game to get into these really big opportunities. And that's like, for a lot of players, sadly, it's like if they can bring another bad player, then they can get into a private game. But like, people have to want to play with you. So what I'd really encourage, and Dan, you take a lot of effort in that, actually, is like, you have to be engaging, right? You can't just be sitting there like we're playing chess and like you're in such anguish, pain for 1 minute to make these decisions. And you think that that's what beating poker is, because it's not. It will limit your career. Like literally, you'll hit that ceiling and you'll just never be able to go further. You have to be able to, people have to want to play with you, and at the same time, you want to be profitable. So it's like, that's the balance. It's really, really hard for so many people. But the idea of playing in these, enormous cash games, everybody identifies, and they all say, man, if I get in that game, I would just crush it. But they just never will, like for the most part. And they never will because they won't do all the work it takes to figure out how to get in that game. And I don't think you can be the best cash game player in the world if you can't even get in the game,
I guess this is why you said Andrew Robl is the best high stakes player in the world. I was like, what? Reading that? What? I don't know about that. But yeah, I guess when you factor in, I mean, my presumption is that we're factoring also getting in the best games in the world, in which case I will say whatever he's done has worked out really well. I think Rick Solomon might top him in those regards, but he did that very well. That whole like merging of things, and he was not. I mean, Rick had the advantage of being in the right circle, whereas Andrew, I don't think really did. Andrew was like basically an online player, so I mean that's a harder barrier to cross. Is that what's going on? Is that why you said that Andrew Robl was the best cash game player?
Yeah, and so like obviously I played in some really big games with Rick Solomon and Andrew Robl, and they're two totally different people, right? So Andrew Robl did something like you just identified it. Andrew Robl was successful in online games. Andrew Robl was successful in private games in Macau, as you know, and then Andrew Robl came back to North America and has been able to orchestrate the largest cash games in North America that I'm aware of. And I doubt people are playing much bigger. 10, 20,000 no limit hold'em is like a pretty big game. And so whereas Rick Solomon didn't come quite with that background, right? So it's a little bit easier for Rick Solomon to get action in the beginning. Andrew Robl gets action despite the fact they know he's a winning player. He's still able to get into these games where he's going to be very successful. And Dan, that might be the most important talent. Yeah. Because if you can't get in the game, it don't matter how fucking good you are. You're playing with yourself, And that's why I said that. And it's nothing to take away from Solomon at all, who's been very, very successful. And like even debating between those two, I think is like it's just a matter of degree. I think that Andrew, though, the difference is Andrew is very active and organizes games, whereas Solomon at this point, that's not his main focus. Solomon is a participant in the games, but that's different than what Andrew's doing and has been able to do.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I see. I see. Okay, I can like get behind this argument. I mean, I did have similar revelations where I realized, I'm actually looking at this thing from a bit of a myopic point of view, particularly when like certain people didn't pay up. But I want to talk about what you mentioned in poker, the fact that to be a maverick, you have to be a fighter. Actually, that's actually one thing that is interesting about poker. I ended up valuing. I kind of refound my faith in poker in that it just is what you said. I knew it was a bit of meritocracy and that it doesn't really care that much about your background at all, and pretty much anyone can succeed if they work hard enough. I personally wondered, though, when it comes to casinos, it seemed like there's an incentive, an incentive for casinos to spread poker. Do you know what I mean? Or it's a very tough incentive to sell. I don't know if that's true, but you're the casino guy, so you know about this sort of thing, because the table games are the ones that make loads of money. Yeah. Poker doesn't usually make a lot of money. So how are you solving this? And if you have any comments on what I said before, feel free to share.
Yeah. So what you're saying is right, Dan. Now the good news is, most gaming companies, if not all, are very Darwinian, and so they're thinking about profit per square foot. Now the good news is, they typically, a lot of these buildings have a lot of square footage that is not driving a lot of profit. So that's not the reason that there's not poker rooms in many places, even where places where they used to have poker rooms. The reason poker rooms ebb and flow, go up and down, is because of management almost every single time. And,
really?
And when literally 90% of your profit is coming from slots, which has less than a 7% of revenue to labor ratio, it's a very simple business to manage. Very simple. Not a lot of people, make all your money. And then maybe you have a hotel room that makes the balance. You might have a conference, just whatever the specifics of that property are, you make some other tertiary revenue. But mostly you make all your revenue off slots. Look, MGM on its main floor, to my knowledge, has not made profits in table games in over 20 years on their main floor. Yeah. And so they do it because there's a lot of different reasons. It brings people to town and so on and so forth. But and they do make a lot of money in tables, but it's typically in salons, in the higher end portions of their business. But it's also sort of like an energy activator, and you feel like it's part of the amenities that you offer. And so so tables itself is very hard. And then inside of that is poker. Poker just takes a rake, right? And so even though it's quite possible to be in Kansas City and make, say, $5 million a year, incremental, because we don't think poker players, you can be disingenuous and lie, but it's just not that true. Most poker players don't play slots, and they don't go play a bunch of table games. Some play Ultimate Texas Hold'em, but not for long. But they're mostly there to play poker. But in order to do that, you have to do a few things, right? You have to dedicate space. You have to build a poker room. You have to build a poker strategy. You have to hire all the poker dealers. You have to train all the poker dealers. Then you have to build your marketing programs. Then you have to build awareness for your poker room. And then you have to think about the promotions you're going to do for poker. Then you have to start thinking about your integrations if you're going to be successful into the largest tournament circuit. You have to do all these things, and because where I said 90% of the profit comes from slots, their background is almost always going to be slots or marketing. They're not in poker at all. So these are technical things I'm talking about. It seems overwhelming. So they say, for the amount of profit that I might be able to make, it's just not worth it. My time is better spent focusing on maximizing my slot revenue, maybe my food revenue, my hotel. And so that's where Maverick comes in, because we partnered with Bally's. We said, Bally's, don't worry about it. We're going to partner with you. We're going to lay out the whole strategy. We're just going to do it together. My team will design the rooms with you. My team will go out and we'll figure out the overall hiring strategy to get all the people. We'll get you integrated into the WPT or WSOP tournament circuit. We will design bad beats and high hands and daily tournament schedules. We will do all the promotion through Instagram and build all the awareness necessary. We will, through the people that I'm signing, like to the Maverick Grand, like Patrik Antonius, we will come and stream and promote your product, and we will grow it. And you won't have to worry about it. You can just work with us, and we'll take care of all the stuff, so you can focus on the portion of your business that makes the most amount of profit. And what we'll then do is drive incremental profit without a lot of headache. And that pitch has worked. And that's why we think that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. We think we're making more money for Bally's in that room than they would have made on their own. And Maverick's going to benefit as well. We're going to make some profit, and we're also going to start to continue to grow the Maverick brand. And so this is one of these things that just works for everybody. They're going to make more money than they were making in Providence, and Maverick's going to grow his brand and make some profit too, and at the same time do something I love, which is grow the brand of poker in one of the biggest markets in the Northeast. So it's like, this is pretty exciting, and that's how we were able to go out and successfully pitch that brand. It's like, I'm going to bring my friends. We're going to stream and support your stuff. We're gonna build a poker room, and we're gonna make it not painful for you, and you're gonna make more profit than you were before. And they're like, deal, sort of.
I mean, well, thank God that you're doing that, because it seems to solve a major pain point with all these casinos. I mean, I was wondering this myself. I mean, I don't know how you're making money on doing this, but it sounds tough. Actually, it sounds really tough. Like what you said, there's lots of details of the business, which I've discovered myself, makes it quite complicated, but not impossible. It just seems like you need. Actually, I want to ask, how do you make this work with all these details? And like you said, it sounds difficult, or this, from my perspective, sounds difficult anyway. How are you like able to bridge this gap where these other businesses can just like install a bunch of fucking slot machines? It's easy. It's like I would compare it to eating candy or something, or you know what I mean, in order to make money versus going the hard route. How are you like? This sounds. Yeah. Why don't you explain?
Well, because Maverick has a team that loves poker, and the team that I deploy that works for me, that partners with the other companies. We live and breathe poker. Like Garrett, who's my VP of poker. He ran the Orleans poker room for 20 some years. And so he's been doing daily tournaments and tournament circuit and spreading cash games and locals market for, at a high level for a very, very long time. Poker's his life, man. He's up in Washington with me almost every day, and we're just in poker rooms. And the whole team, like, we have a team full of people where poker is the most important thing in the world, and most organizations don't have that. And it's by design, right? They want people to think that slots is the most important thing in the world. And so when we're able to say, hey, I have this team, and I have these high level poker players as well, so we'll work with you on streaming, and we're going to promote the heck out of these rooms. We're just going to make a bunch of money. It solves all the problems for them, because they don't have a team full of people where poker is the most important thing in the world. Not in their building, not in their business, and they don't have, access to the people that I have access to. So it's like one of these true partnerships. Is a win-win, honestly, and it's because I think it's because it comes from my heart. Like Maverick, like my company, we love poker more than any other company out there. Like, and that's not to say that Rob Young don't love poker, and he has a poker room and a poker company. Like he does too,
sure.
Like of course he does. Like, but what I guess what I'm really saying is, our team lives and dies. We think about poker all the time, and so that. And so when we come out and we lay out a program to go partner with somebody, it's well thought out. It has all the details done. We know exactly how many tables, where low voltage wiring needs to be, whether we should purchase or lease all the shufflers. How can we keep the cost down to a minimum so we can get profitability to a maximum? We can come in with a full program that's just like turn on the switch and let's go. And I think that's because we have the experience. Like I have like 7 poker rooms, and they're all growing like crazy, because I think my authenticity and my love for poker shines through.
It sounds like the simple answer, from what I can see, and I did not expect this answer actually, but it makes sense to me, is basically love is the reason why this thrives. Something in it that that resonates in a certain way that permeates through all the bullshit and allows people to keep persevering. Actually, that's a quality of it. Okay, so why again the North American side? Yeah, why like what is it? The New England portion of America? I don't really understand that, to be honest, but I'm glad that you're spreading it there. I personally, like, hopefully if they have successful poker there, I'm down to check out. I wanted to go to Boston. I've never been to Boston, but it seems up my alley, actually, compared to this area.
So what it is that market has 7 or 8 million people within driving distance, and they don't have the biggest room has 30 tables, and so we know that there's an opportunity to consolidate that play and offer a better product. We can see the rake they're taking. We can see how they focus on their promos. And it's sort of been an afterthought for a lot of these places, which is sad because as I was growing up, I started playing in 92. The Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun, they had some of the biggest poker rooms in North America, actually. And over time, they just, they make so much money in slots. They just kept focusing on that portion of their business. And that's what's created the opportunity. And so it just turned out that Bally's had this big opportunity in this big room. They had a massive facility with a lot of square footage. They already had 22 tables that were technically live. So it was really more about just growing the business they had. And we're just set up for success. And so I think both of us just saw the opportunity and seized on it. And I think that, Sue Kim, who owns Standard General, owns Bally's, he just saw the passion in me, and he's a big supporter of poker. He owns the Tropicana as well, and he has a stream at Commerce, for example, and he's really focused on real-time wagering and getting himself in position as he works through the regulatory compliance in the various states, so that he's in position as someone who owns 18 casinos to go out and offer that amenity when it becomes legalized. And so poker is part of that for him. And so we fit into his overall strategy. And it's just one of these things where I think is able to save a bunch of steps for everyone. So that's why we're going there first. We were going to do the Tropicana in Vegas first, and the Oakland A's came. And then, now they're blowing up the building. So
I'm curious, by the way, so in your business, what have been some of the challenges that you faced while doing it? And we could go back to the billionaires you work with, because you said you learned to load from these like 5 billionaires. Like one was Sheldon Adelson. I don't remember the other ones. Maybe I should know all of them. What are the other ones, and what kind of stuff did you learn from them?
Like all of them, were great impacts in my life, and all provided different opportunities, and you just try to learn from successful people. And so, I started with Michael Gaughan, who owned Coast Resorts at the time. Now he owns South Point. And he did me a big favor. I was going to Georgetown Law, and he was actually a big Georgetown booster. I didn't know that, and it just worked out that way. And I got a lot of notoriety while I was in undergrad at UNLV, because I graduated with 5 degrees, took 64 credits or 22 classes in a semester, 152 credits, I think, off the top of my head in a calendar year. And that got me a lot of publicity nationwide. And so Michael saw that, reached out to me, and gave me a job. But what he really did was he sent me to dealer school, and I learned how to deal, and I can deal all games. And then he sent me to the sports book. He sent me to the cage, and I worked graveyard. He did all kinds of amazing favors for me, because I know what right looks like in my casino. And he was the first, very successful person that I worked with, and he gave me my biggest opportunity in gaming, and he got me started, and then from there, it just sort of went on, and I worked for a guy named Jeff Gorell, who owns Newmark Realty and is a billionaire, owns some casinos in upstate New York. I worked for Jeremy Jacobs, who owns, they have them in Boston Bruins, but they own Delaware North, and they have a lot of casinos nationwide. And then later on, I worked for a guy named Kazu Okada. While I was buying 2 casinos, I was the COO of a slot manufacturer named Aruze. It was a Japanese company, and Kazu owned it. And I learned a lot about him. Him and I are very similar. We're tenacious. We're willing to fight for what we want, and just go get it. And you don't give up. I think that's the biggest thing. He started as, I think he's high school educated. I'm sure he is actually, and he learned how to fix pachinko machines. He eventually figured out how to make pachinko machines, and then he ended up owning a pachinko machine manufacturer called Universal, and then he built a North American slot machine manufacturer called Aruze. And the biggest thing where I've seen people really successful, and he embodies that, is you have to bet on yourself, in life. And I don't own stock.
After what?
You have to bet on yourself. You have to be willing to really go all in on yourself. And I think a lot of people don't, and they should, but a lot of people don't always know quite what they want to do. But the people who are really willing to go all in, be out there, bet on yourself, live with the consequences. That's what it takes to drive forward, to be very successful. And Kazu embodied that. He still does. And so I got that. And then the last one was Sheldon Adelson, who had the largest gaming company in the world when he died, at a factor of 5. And Sheldon also high school educated, very, very tough, and obviously bet on himself, and was always had great instincts. That man took water and built land and built Macau on the Cotai Strip, and he built Marina Bay Sands, probably the most profitable casino in the world. You got to be able to believe in yourself, bet on yourself, and get a good team around you. You do that, you do a lot.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. One of the things, it does seem like management and also the right people seems to be wildly important. And I've been trying to figure that out myself. Well, why don't we talk about, we got to wrap things up kind of soon. Why don't we talk about how Maverick's going to take over the world? Is it just the poker world? Are you going to do some other stuff? What's the plan that you can reveal anyway?
Well, I mean, my plan right now is to continue to grow the Maverick brand. We're really focused on poker. We're going to be bringing in a lot of high profile players into our brand. They'll support the various streams, but really what we're trying to do is jump over from the Venn diagram of the poker playing community, which by the way is 60 million Americans, but we want to get over to the larger population of North America and really the world. And so what we're going to do is get a group of us together with some of the highest profile players in the game and start to work on building lifestyle brands or alcohol or all the ways where we can jump over from the smaller Venn diagram of poker players to the larger Venn diagram of the United States and really world population. And so it's pretty fun to start to have Maverick be part of that and then get these players behind me. And Patrik is really the first one that I'll talk about. And there's some others that will be announced very, very shortly, actually. But, because we think there's a real opportunity to leverage those 60 million people who already play poker and love poker, have them start to consume our goods and be associated with the Maverick brand, and then jump over as there's more television exposure to even broader audiences. So, to think that it's like totally possible that there'll be people wearing Maverick hoodies that will have a zipper on the inside pocket where the people wearing it will wear it just because they think it's cool, but also got zippers where they can put a strap of 10,000 or a bunch of cranberries if they ever get them, and their chips are just safer. But they'll probably never do that. But girls will like it just because their ID is safer and there's a zipper on the inside, and just starting getting apparel, because it's one of these things where it's really interesting. Where there's only 8 million Americans skateboarding and 20 million Americans playing soccer, and there's 60 million Americans playing poker, but yet it has not transferred into a lifestyle brand. And we're working with some major brands right now, trying to figure out which is the right partner for us. And in that broader community, and maybe one day see Maverick gear in a Dick's or something would be pretty cool, So that's what we're working on right now.
All right, cool. Well, this would be wildly positive for poker and for everybody. They should be supporting this a lot. Hopefully this gets people to wear a lot of Maverick hats. I'll wear a Maverick hat. F- it. Yeah, if poker can expand to broader horizons and somehow provide value, well, if it can become a spectator sport specifically, that would be massively positive. And I personally want it to go to other avenues as well.
I have a question for you. Actually, it's something I've been wondering about, and actually Patrik and I were talking about it. So
Yeah.
It's no secret that, and I think I don't know all the people watching this podcast. Many will know, but some won't. So when Jungle plays, he often he dresses up for streams, and oftentimes he'll take a personality, like is that Surfer Dan? Is that San Diego Dan? What's his name? Dan? San Diego Dan? Like when you were the surf guy, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So our question is, when you take on these personalities, do you think that you adjust your play style accordingly? Because obviously you have the fundamentals no matter what. But I kind of feel like when I was playing mixed with you kind of I think that there was different strategies you're deploying based on the way you were composed that day. Am I imagining that? Or is that?
I feel like I'm not, but maybe I am. I'm not aware of it. I guess that's possible. Because San Diego has some personality traits that I don't have. Like he hangs out on the beach, and I can do this too. But what is your personality after all? And he's a bit more chill. He's happier if you win. Good job, bro, and all this sort of stuff. He doesn't get too riled up. So maybe there's something there. I just trying to unleash my inner beach boy.
It's it's pretty fun. Like, and so like, and another question related to that was like, so do you think? I wish that I would have known you for 20 years, so I could have seen the evolution of Dan, for 20 years, because I've known you for like 4 years or something. So it's like, did you start to embody or get these like Dan Diego? Did you do that to sort of push yourself to become more extroverted, to engage more in the game? Like, were you doing that to just push yourself internally, or because you thought, and oftentimes it's life, so it's probably both, but you thought it would help the games, help stream, or just sort of like, like, how was your thought process? How that evolved, actually?
So it's a bit of all the above. It is partly to engage more on stream. It's also because when you're playing at a poker table, I was often at least around like a bunch of guys that were just kind of like doing nothing, saying nothing, maybe talking about poker hands or strategy, and I just thought like, I'm bored a lot of the time here. I already know like a lot of strategies, whatever. I'm like done it for 18 years, and I thought, let's spice things up a little bit. What if Dan Diego Surfer Bro comes in and says things and throws a frisbee around? So it's a bit of my own personal entertainment as well, and I just think it'd be a lot more fun to watch if some like goofball comes in. Not to mention, a lot of people had a lot of positive results, and this is an attempt to make it more what's the word? More of a watchable thing, because it's going to be very hard for almost everyone to watch and relate to a bunch of poker nerds or whatever, just sit and play. I mean, how can anyone relate to that unless they're a poker nerd? Especially if they just talk about strategy and stuff like that. But people can relate a lot to like doing weird shit. Well, some people can, and at least like find it entertaining if like some guy's acting like a weirdo on the table, or there's now a surfer bro there. And what's funny is I was behaving like a surfer bro in like a surf shop, and I was like doing it as a bit of a joke and like whatever. But they're like the guys there were like dabbing me up and stuff, and I was starting to think, well, maybe I am a surfer bro. So.
Yeah. I think it's pretty fun, and I think it's interesting that you even do it in live games that are not streamed. So it's like it's just, and I do think that when you're your surfer bro, Dan Diego, I think that you you're a little more aggressive early, with a little wider range of hands and earlier position. Let me see if you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. That's how I feel. But
I gotta watch that.
I just it all up. Like, now you're going to change it up on me. Now you're going to be the opposite. I should have never. But see, you're my friend, so I'm happy to share that information. But okay, another question is, okay, let's say that you could only do one of these three things. Which would make you the most amount of money? Triton tournaments, playing 2, 4, 3, 6, or 5, 10 mix, which is either in the private at Bellagio or Aria, or whatever no limit live games that you could get access to. Which of those three would you predict, if you ran 1,000 of your lifetimes, with each of those things would have the highest profit for you?
It's gotta be. Well, it depends on how wide my access for these no limit games is, but if I had like decent access at all, it'd be the no limit games for sure. Followed by the Triton ones, followed by the mixed games. I think that the mixed games are really hard to crush and really hard to beat for a large amount. I think that people underestimate how much variance is really in those. That there's a lot of evidence for that, and yeah, I just don't think those are very easily crushable at all. Especially you start playing lots of ring limit games like Ring Stud and stuff like that. I mean, I'm just like not super confident that those ones are really hard to crack, man. It just seems like a bit of a toss up on who's doing really well in some of these and who's not. I could be wrong, but man, like in no limit, you can get away with a lot of shit. And if you figure out how to beat your opponents in no limit, you can just crush them if they're like quite bad anyway.
But you have to have access to, like, say 2,400 or higher, and that's probably the hardest part of that strategy for the no limit person, right? Like, having a consistent game that you can play often enough that you can just be super profitable. That's the hardest part, is having the game. Right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there are some spots. It's kind of you have to keep a wide net. I mean, this is one of the functions I'm trying to facilitate by creating a system at scale. But basically, have a system where like everyone's finding games collectively. Like one thing we'd like to report in our community that I'm creating is report on like what's going on with the games in your casino that you're opening up in Rhode Island, like and telling people what the market is like and that kind of thing. So people can go and play if they're like a specialist in No Limit or if they're specialist in Badoogie or whatever it is, or mixed games. But yeah, or even like trying to play in like live games, or excuse me, private games. So that's also relevant too. Sometimes they're private games, or can't get in all private games, but sometimes you get in some of them.
Yeah, like that mixed game a couple summers ago, I was playing with you. You were playing a lot, and I jumped up. I jumped in right away. I was up like 1.2 million, and it was like Antonius, Ivy, Seaver, Brock, you, sometimes Brian Rath. So I'm thinking like, why the am I winning? I quit. I was only up like 300 grand when I finally stopped playing. I was like, I love to hang out with these guys. I love to play, but like I'm not even sure why I was up 1.2 in the beginning. Like, how much better can I really be than this group? Like, how can I really have much of a positive expectation in the long run? Now, like there was a few like weaker opponents or whatever, but like there's always like 5 solid in that game, And like I know last year, like Gus Hansen started coming in, and like he might have been the biggest online loser in history or whatever everybody says, but like he's obviously very skilled. So it's like those games are tough, right? Like I don't understand. Antonius is the best. I love him because he just wants everyone in the game. Like like whoever it is, he's like, oh, we want him in the game. It's great. Like I've never heard Patrik go, no, I want him in the game. It's like, whereas I look around and I go, who can I beat? And I'm looking for like 2 or 3 people. There's like 2 or 3 people, and I sort of try to focus on playing with them. But the problem with that game, there wasn't 2 or 3 people usually. Like,
Yeah.
but you beat that game. You beat that game for sure.
I think I do, but it like still swings all over the place, and it's very natural. Not to mention, I like try to get very analytical about where my edge comes from. I try to break it down by game, and like the more analytical, the better. Actually, I probably should do it even more. To be fair, do it at a higher level of detail. Like estimate what loss rate I'd have in like Raz or whatever it is, and estimate what loss rate I have in Stud to some extent, and what win rate's possible in No Limit. Like this would be really the way to get to the answers. It's very hard to guess, or like I at least look at like which games I'm winning and losing at, like compared to everyone. But if you can find 3 or so marks, that should be pretty good. Any last words before we wrap things up?
No, man. Like I appreciate your time, and happy to come on anytime. Happy to talk. It's a fun discussion, and I hope someone's able to take stuff from this, because really the biggest philosophy from my perspective is if you can really build your life around finding ways for all the people around you to win, I think everyone just ends up winning more. And I think that's like the big evolution. I think when people first got introduced to me, because I was trying to build a brand with Maverick, and it's ripping off Phil Hellmuth. It's almost that I'm a bully to Phil, but Phil sort of deserves it, So it's like, what it is you bet on yourself, you believe in yourself, you put yourself out there, be a person who's willing to live with the consequences. Surround yourself with people who are good people, who will help you when things are good and bad. And it doesn't matter what we're talking about, but if you can do those things, you're just going to be more successful in whatever we are talking about. And that's what I hope people can take from this today, because that's something I believe, and it's what I want my kids to take from me, and it's something I like about you. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and thank you for your insights. I appreciate it.
Talk soon.